Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, and what I want to do in this video is help people who already own this game make it that much better, or if you're intending to buy it, I'm going to offer you some suggestions and house rules that will help you enjoy the game the way I think it's supposed to be played, or at least it's intended to be played. During my explanation of how to make this game better, I might dance around some of the terms or the specific things that show up because I don't want this to be full spoilers. What I want it to be is a tool to help you maximize the time you spend playing this game and to avoid being frustrated the way that I was when I played it. I can tell this game is really considerate and geared towards Harry Potter fans. It is so IP specific, and I know I just did my top 5 most cinematic board games, and Harry Potter did not make my list. And it didn't make it because I had so many issues with the gameplay. As it stands, I can't recommend this game, but I think it's really close. So here are my suggestions to make this game way better. First suggestion is that there needs to be a culling of the deck. What I mean by that is that every time you open up a brand new box, the game gives you more and more cards that you have to add to the draw deck. And since this is a deck builder, in a 2-player game, after getting through 7 games and adding cards every single time, my husband and I barely touched a third of the deck. There's only one opportunity to flush the 6 cards that show up as the market options to buy cards, to add it to your deck so that you can continue building your deck and becoming stronger and stronger. And when you play 2 players, you just never get through this deck. And if I see another butterbeer show up in my options, or a chocolate frog, or Reparo, I really felt like by game 6 and 7, after losing and then trying again, even losing I think 2 games with game 5 or 6, we just felt like we weren't even getting the card options that the game wanted us to get and the game needed us to get. Because there was a specific card and a handful of cards that would help us in the later games. Again, being vague here because I don't want you to know what's coming up. But when you can't even draw the card that's required to execute an action on your turn to win the game, that's problematic. So what I think is, instead of having 6 Reparos in a 2-player game, you take out a certain amount of these basic cards that you get in games 1, 2, and 3, and you limit those. So, do we need 3 butterbeers for 2 players? No, I don't think so. Maybe just 2 butterbeers. Maybe just 2 chocolate frogs. Maybe 3 or 4 Reparos, and then get rid of the other copies. Now, if it's a unique card, keep it. That's going to help this deck stay a little slimmer, and it's going to give you the choice that you need and the choice that you just have to have in this game. Another suggestion about the draw deck is that you only get to do the flush 1 time per game. Now, you do the flush because the cards are too expensive to buy and nobody can buy a card, or they're just not the cards that you want to put in your deck. That can happen again. This game is very luck-based, so you have cards out there that you don't want, so you flush the 6 cards and repopulate it. Well, maybe the next 6 cards are just as expensive or just as worthless to you in the situation that you are in. And you can't do it again. The optional rule that was made after the game was released is you can do it once. I think you should be able to do it more than once, but at a cost. Whatever that cost is, it sounds fair to everyone at the table, then it should be a certain number of coins, or it should be a collective something, like a sacrifice, or a hit point, or something that makes sense. But you should be able to flush the deck more than once. I also feel like some of the abilities don't necessarily gear to a 2-player game as easily as a 3 or 4-player game, and that to me just felt a little imbalanced. And so if you wanted to look at those cards and specifically cull for what cards would benefit a 2-player game, I think that'd be a great idea too. So with the draw deck aside, there are 3 other components to the game that really swing wildly from you're gonna win the game, no problem, all the way to it's kind of fated that you're going to lose. And the first one is which villains you draw. The game continually adds villains, and at first you're fighting one, but as you see on the game board, there's places to put 3 villains, and so the game board pretty much dictates that at some point in this series of games 1 through 7, you are probably going to be fighting multiple villains at once. Now, if you get the wrong combination of villains, I have found out, you lose, and you kind of know. The writing's on the wall. So what happens is they piggyback on each other. So for instance, if you've got Barty Crouch, heroes can't remove locations. Then you've got Peter Pettigrew from Game 3. Active hero reveals the top card of his or her deck. If its value is $1 or more, discard it, add 1 to the location. So you've got person who's adding location, a person that's preventing a location, and then you've got Draco. Each time a token is added to the location, the active hero loses 2. So you're adding a location, you can't take it off, and you lose 2 every time. These combinations are pretty harsh at times, and they prevent players from responding quickly enough, and again, it just can be overwhelming, particularly in the very first draw. What my husband and I did toward games 6 and 7, when we had lost too many games that we knew we were going to lose based on the first several rounds, we would shuffle up all the villains, play out the first 3, look at them and say, yeah, there's no way we're gonna win because we've got Bellatrix. She makes you draw an extra Dark Arts card every turn, and in the beginning, your locations go draw 1, draw 1, draw 2, and then it starts to get even harder from there, where you might be drawing 3 Dark Art cards on your turn, and these, it just spills over and over and over until you have this cascading of unfortunate events that I don't think the game really wants you to feel. There's a feeling hopeless, and then there's a feeling of we're getting completely obliterated and there's no chance of us coming back. And so when you have the bad combination of villains to start the game, when you're really weak, then you fill up your locations too fast and can't take off the location markers, and you continually get harder and harder because you're going through these cards, adding more and more Dark Arts cards, and then you're drawing these cards, which so many of them say add a location, draw a new card, draw a new card. I mean, it's crazy. Reveal an additional Dark Arts card. They can literally go from I'm drawing 1 card on my turn to Bellatrix adding another one, to you crossing over into a new location, adding another card, and then you have these draw again, draw again, draw again. One time, I was at 10 hit points, and by the end of the villain's Dark Arts phase, both my husband and I had stunned, added 2 more locations, which of course cascaded other events, and then we had to lose half our hand, couldn't do anything hardly because we were paralyzed, and then we go back to 10, and then our turn was half turn, and it was just devastating. I don't think the game wants you to feel that bad, and for the game to have such wild swings, I think is problematic. So my suggestion to fix these things is to do one of 2 things with the villains. Shuffle together all of the Game 1 villains, shuffle them up, put them on top. Game 2, shuffle those, put them next. And so what you're doing is you're stacking the deck, and you're essentially going from easier to harder to harder to harder to hardest all the way to the very bottom. The other way is to mix up all of the game villains and say, well, I'll take 1 from Game 1, 1 from Game 2, 1 from Game 3, 1 from 4, and 6, and you shuffle all of them together, and then you make a stack. And then you do it again. So you're getting some easier ones with some harder ones, and then easier with harder, so you never feel completely walloped. You never feel like just so like pinned down. The Dark Arts cards, I don't think you can fix them. They tell you to add all of them, the stack, this giant stack of cards that starts out with this many, and you have to add all of them. that's just going to be a swing. But if you're mitigating the villains and you're hopefully trying to control your locations, because these are really getting you in a pickle, and then you're able to draw better cards, I think that this luck can be, it can be manageable. I will say that it seems like you can't play the game without Harry. In the very beginning, Harry Potter seems kind of meh, but at the end, if you don't play with Harry as a character, then you probably aren't going to win. And I know he's the lead character, but it feels like in a two-player game, you can never balance it out and play with two other characters, because we could never risk losing the entire game. Because, and this leads into one of my other issues with the game, these games last a long time, and if you play an entire game and you know you're going to lose and you lose, you have to play it again. And so you're spending 2 hours playing a game. They get so long. I mean, there's so many villains. It takes forever to get through just in a two-player game. You want to have a good time, you want it to be challenging, but you don't want it to be impossible. And so I think that your time will be well spent in this game if you add a couple of these tips and suggestions that I've offered you, because there is so much here. And honestly, the original game rules feel like they want you to literally throw everything in here and just play with everything all at the same time and just continually add to this. And I think that it's too much, and it just makes it to where you actually can't focus and you're not doing what the game then wants you to do to win. And so the objective is to kill all the villains. Well, if you every time you add more and more and more and more, it's like, oh my gosh, this is like overwhelming. I've played and I've killed these villains over and over and over again. When in a movie, the first movie you play and you kill certain villains, and in the next movie you play and kill other villains. And so it doesn't feel as cinematic as you continually do the same thing over and over and over again. This is supposed to be a cooperative deck building game that is rich in Harry Potter lore, and you're supposed to have a great time with it, and you're supposed to feel a little beat down, but you're not supposed to feel that bad. And there were so many times playing this game that we just felt that bad. And I think they can fix it. Particularly, at least I think I can fix it. So with the game as it stands, it can be better. Please let me know in the comment section below what you do to make your Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle better, or if you play it just the way it's intended and you've had really, really great success. I would love to hear about it. Thanks for watching.